It was a clear, peaceful day when the aliens arrived. No one expected it. The world was going about its usual business. People were working, shopping, and going about their daily lives. When suddenly, the sky above Earth changed. A bright light appeared in the sky, moving faster than anything humans had ever seen. At first, people thought it was a comet, or maybe a shooting star, but then it slowed down and hovered above the city. People stopped what they were doing. Eyes turned upward, and hearts raced. The strange craft hovered, silent but massive, casting a long shadow over the city below. Some people screamed. Others froze, unable to move. News stations quickly scrambled to broadcast the event, and soon the entire world was watching. The unknown ship was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Smooth, metallic, and gleaming, it shone brightly against the blue sky. The craft touched down gently in the middle of a large open field, sending a wave of dust flying into the air. A door on the side of the ship slowly opened, and figures began to emerge. The first to step out were tall and thin, their skin a pale shade of blue, almost glowing. Their eyes were large, black and empty, giving them a cold and emotionless look. Their bodies were covered in strange, form-fitting suits that shimmered as they moved. They walked confidently toward the crowd that had gathered, not a single person daring to approach them. The aliens spoke in a language that no human could understand, but the tone was unmistakable, clear and commanding. They were not here for peace, or so it seemed. The air around them felt heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. One of the aliens raised a hand, and a deep voice echoed through the air, somehow clear and audible to everyone, despite the language barrier. "Humans," it said, "we come from a place far beyond your stars. We have watched your kind for a long time. We believed you were weak, fragile, incapable of surviving the harsh realities of space." A strange feeling of unease swept through the crowd. The words were clear, but the way they were spoken made humans feel small, insignificant. The alien continued, its voice growing louder. "You are fragile creatures. Your bodies are weak, and your technology is primitive. We can survive on worlds that would kill you in moments." The aliens' words hung in the air, like a challenge. They spoke as if they were superior to humanity in every way. The people below them felt humiliated, but they couldn't deny that the aliens had advanced technology far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Some humans, especially the leaders and scientists, watched in awe, wondering what the aliens would do next. Others, though, began to question their words. How could they be so sure about humanity? Were humans truly as weak as they claimed, or was there more to them than the aliens realized? The aliens stood in front of the crowd, waiting. It was clear they expected no challenge. They were here to prove a point. Humans were fragile, and they were the proof. But as they looked out over the people, something began to stir. A small voice inside some of the humans whispered that maybe, just maybe, they weren't as weak as the aliens thought. As the aliens stood in front of the crowd, silence filled the air. The people didn't know what to do. They were terrified, yet curious. The massive ships hovered above them, casting long shadows over the city. The aliens' cold eyes watched everyone, as if sizing them up. They stood like giants, towering over the humans, their faces emotionless. The crowd began to murmur nervously, whispering to one another. What did the aliens want? Why were they here? Was this the end for humanity? The fear was growing, but there was also something else. Uncertainty. Many wondered how these beings could be so sure of their superiority. A man stepped forward. His name was Captain James Miller, a military leader, strong and fearless. He wasn't about to let anyone speak for humanity without standing up for his people. As he walked toward the aliens, the crowd fell silent. Everyone knew this moment would define what happened next. Miller raised his hand in the air, signaling for calm. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice steady, though it trembled slightly under the weight of the moment. The alien leader turned its large, dark eyes toward him. It stepped forward, its movements graceful but intimidating. The alien spoke again, its voice booming through the air, though its words still sounded strange to human ears. "We are here to test you," it said, each word feeling heavy with meaning. "We have seen your kind. We have watched you struggle. You live short lives, and your bodies are fragile. We want to see how strong you truly are." Captain Miller didn't hesitate. "Test us," he asked, his voice growing stronger. "You think we're weak. That's what you came here to prove." He looked around at the crowd, at the people who were now beginning to regain some courage. "We're not weak. We've survived wars, disasters, and everything else thrown at us. And we're still standing." The alien leader tilted its head, as if considering the captain's words. Then it raised a long arm and pointed to the ground. "If you are strong, show us. Prove it." A cold shiver ran down Miller's spine. He knew this was not a request. It was a challenge. The aliens were not asking for peace or offering friendship. They were testing humanity's strength, but they were doing it in a way that felt like a threat. Miller glanced at the soldiers and scientists behind him, then back at the alien leader. "We'll show you," Miller said, his voice firm, "but you won't like what you see." The aliens didn't respond. They simply stood in place, waiting. As the silence stretched on, humans began to gather their strength. Some looked at the aliens in fear, others in defiance. They all knew something had to change. They couldn't let these beings believe they were weak, not without a fight. Captain Miller turned back to the crowd. "Get ready," he said. "We're about to show them just how strong we are." The aliens remained still, their cold, emotionless eyes watching the humans closely. They didn't believe the humans could match their strength, and they waited, ready to prove that humanity's fragility was its greatest weakness. But Captain Miller wasn't so sure. Something in him told him that humans were about to prove them all wrong. A human challenge. As the alien leader's words echoed in the air, a tense silence followed. The humans, still in shock from the arrival of the aliens, now found themselves staring at a challenge that none of them were prepared for. The aliens were waiting for humanity to prove its strength. But how? How could anyone prove their strength against beings who were so advanced, so powerful? Captain Miller stood tall, his mind racing. He knew the aliens didn't understand humanity, not at all. But he also knew that humans were not weak. They might not have alien technology or superpowers, but they had something that the aliens hadn't seen yet: determination, courage, and a never-give-up attitude. As the crowd waited, unsure of what would happen next, a figure stepped forward from the crowd. It was Sarah Thompson, a young woman from the city who had always lived an ordinary life. She wasn't a soldier or a leader, just a regular person with a strong will. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she felt something stir inside her, an urge to show the aliens that humans were not to be underestimated. With a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward, pushing through the crowd. She didn't know exactly what she was about to do, but she knew one thing. She couldn't stand by and let the aliens think they could mock humanity. "I'll do it," Sarah said, her voice clear and firm. The crowd gasped in surprise. She wasn't a military officer, and she certainly wasn't anyone special. But here she was, offering to take on the alien challenge. She looked up at the alien leader, her eyes full of determination. "I'll prove to you that we're not weak." The alien leader turned its cold eyes on Sarah. It seemed almost amused. It hadn't expected such a bold move from a human. But it didn't back down. "Very well," it said, its voice deep and commanding. "You will face the test. If you fail, it will prove that your kind is nothing more than fragile." Sarah didn't flinch. She stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenge the aliens had in mind. The aliens had already shown their advanced technology, but what they didn't know was that humans had their own strength. And Sarah was about to show them. Captain Miller watched, amazed by her courage. He hadn't expected anyone to volunteer, but now he felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was the moment humanity needed to stand up for itself. The alien leader raised its hand, and a massive screen appeared in the sky above them. The screen showed an image of a dangerous environment, lava flowing, storms raging, and extreme radiation levels that no human could survive. It was a test of survival, one that would push anyone to their limits. "This is your test," the alien leader declared. "Survive here, and you will prove your strength. Fail, and you will show us that you are truly fragile." Sarah took one last look at the crowd, then faced the screen. Without hesitation, she walked toward the dangerous environment. The crowd held its breath. Was she really going to do this? Could a human survive what the aliens had prepared? But Sarah didn't turn back. She knew what was at stake, and as she stepped forward, she made a silent promise to herself to show the aliens that humanity was far from fragile. It was just beginning to fight back. The air was thick with tension as Sarah stood at the edge of the dangerous environment, staring at the swirling storm and boiling lava on the screen. The crowd behind her was silent, holding its breath. The alien leader had just presented her with a test that no human had ever survived. Lava, deadly storms, and radiation. Everything about this place screamed danger. But Sarah didn't back down. She was ready to show the aliens that humanity was stronger than they thought. Captain Miller stood in the crowd, watching her every move. He couldn't believe she had volunteered. But now that she had, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. "Come on, Sarah," he whispered under his breath. "Show them what we're made of." The alien leader's voice broke the silence. "This is your test, human. Enter this environment and prove your strength. If you survive, we will begin to understand your power." Sarah didn't speak. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, walking into the area that had been created for the test. As soon as she crossed the invisible line, the ground beneath her seemed to rumble. A gust of hot wind hit her face, carrying the scent of sulfur and ash. The air felt heavy, and she could feel the heat radiating from the ground beneath her feet. The alien leader watched her carefully, its dark eyes focused on Sarah. "Let's see how long you last," it said coldly. Sarah took another step, feeling the heat rise. Sweat started to bead on her forehead, but she didn't stop. Her shoes dug into the cracked, dry ground as she moved forward, every step feeling like an effort. She could hear the sound of distant thunder as the storm above her began to swirl and crackle with electricity. The heat was unbearable. She could feel it burning her skin, but she forced herself to keep going. "This is nothing," she thought. "I can do this. I have to." But it wasn't just the heat. The storm above her began to move closer, sending bolts of lightning crashing down toward the ground. The wind picked up, howling, pushing against her body. Sarah gritted her teeth, determined not to let the storm take her down. She kept moving forward, step by step, even though her body screamed for her to stop. The lava ahead of her was bubbling and spitting, sending waves of scorching heat toward her. It was terrifying. She could feel the air grow thick with the smell of burning sulfur. But she didn't stop. She was in the middle of a test, her test, and nothing could stop her now. From the distance, the crowd watched in awe. The aliens had set up this challenge to show just how weak humanity was, but they hadn't expected anyone to survive it. Sarah's determination amazed them. She was strong. She was not giving up. The aliens were beginning to wonder, was there something more to humans than they had realized? Captain Miller's eyes were fixed on Sarah. "You've got this," he whispered. The storm raged above her, but Sarah didn't flinch. She kept moving forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to prove them wrong. She had to show the aliens that humanity was stronger than they thought. Sarah's body was beginning to feel the weight of the test. The heat from the lava was almost unbearable, and the winds from the storm were knocking her off balance. Her skin was burning, her clothes torn, and her muscles screamed with every step. But she kept moving forward. She couldn't stop. The aliens were watching, and she wasn't about to fail. The air was thick with heat as Sarah neared the edge of the bubbling lava. The storm raged above, lightning flashing in the dark sky, crackling around her like 1,000 angry snakes. Every gust of wind hit her like a punch, sending her staggering. But she didn't fall. She stood tall, pushing through the pain. Then the worst happened. A bolt of lightning struck the ground nearby, sending a wave of electricity through the air. The shockwave hit Sarah with such force that it threw her to the ground. Her body hit the hard earth with a sickening thud. And for a moment, everything went black. The crowd gasped. The aliens stared, their cold eyes watching with interest. It looked like the test was over. The humans were fragile after all. Sarah had fallen, and now she lay motionless on the ground. The alien leader raised an eyebrow, satisfied that the test had been won. But then something unexpected happened. Slowly, Sarah's body began to move. Her fingers twitched. Her chest rose and fell with each breath. She wasn't dead. She was still alive. Sarah's eyes snapped open. The pain was intense, but she could feel something incredible happening. She could feel her body healing. The burn marks on her skin were fading, the cuts on her arms closing up. She could feel the energy in her cells, working to fix everything that had been broken. Her muscles began to repair themselves, her strength returning as if nothing had ever happened. The alien leader tilted its head, confused. It had never seen anything like this before. The humans were supposed to be fragile, weak, unable to withstand the harshest conditions. But here Sarah was, getting up after being struck by lightning, healing in a way that no alien had ever seen. Sarah groaned, pushing herself to her feet. Her clothes were still torn, but her skin was no longer burned. The cuts and bruises were disappearing right before the alien's eyes. It was like nothing had ever happened to her. She was healing faster than anything the aliens had ever witnessed. The crowd watched in disbelief. They had seen the lightning strike Sarah down, but now she was standing tall again, as strong as before. Some people started to cheer, realizing what had just happened. Sarah wasn't just surviving the test. She was healing in a way that no alien could explain. The aliens were silent, their eyes fixed on Sarah, who stood in the middle of the storm, as if nothing had happened. They had believed that humans were weak, that they couldn't survive the harsh conditions of the test. But now, they saw something they had never expected, a human who could heal, who could regenerate, who could keep going even when it seemed impossible. The alien leader spoke, its voice cold and unsure. How? How is this possible? Sarah didn't answer. She just looked up at the sky, taking a deep breath. The storm still raged around her, but she was ready to keep going. No matter what the aliens threw at her, she would survive. Because that was the power of humanity, the ability to heal, to regenerate, and to never give up. The storm above Sarah swirled fiercely, but she stood unmoving. Her body healed and her strength fully returned. The aliens, once so confident in their belief that humans were weak, stared at her in stunned silence. They had watched as she was struck by lightning, expecting her to fall and fail the test. But instead, she had stood back up, stronger than before. The alien leader's cold eyes narrowed as it studied Sarah. It had seen many species, many different beings, but it had never encountered one like this. Humans were supposed to be fragile, weak, and unable to withstand such harsh conditions. Yet here she was, standing tall, healed, and unbroken. The alien leader's mind raced, trying to understand how this was possible. How is this happening? The alien leader muttered, more to itself than to anyone else. Sarah's breath was steady, her heart pounding with the rush of energy in her veins. She could feel the power of regeneration coursing through her. And though the test was far from over, she had already proved something incredible. She had shown the aliens that they had no idea what humans were truly capable of. The alien leader took a step forward, still unsure. "This is impossible," it said. "No species can heal like this. You should have been destroyed." The other aliens watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. They had all believed that the test was designed to crush humanity, to show the truth of their weakness. But now, they were starting to question everything they thought they knew about humans. Sarah glanced around at the watching crowd, her face set with determination. She wasn't going to stop now. The aliens had come here to test her, to test humanity, and she had shown them one of the greatest powers humans possessed. The power to heal, to regenerate, and to keep going no matter what. The alien leader finally spoke again, its voice laced with a strange mix of curiosity and disbelief. You are different. We have never seen anything like this. Your species, you are not weak. You are not fragile. Sarah didn't speak. She simply stood her ground, feeling the energy of regeneration still flowing through her. She had shown them that humans were more than just flesh and bone. They were survivors. They were resilient. And most importantly, they could heal when others would have fallen. Behind her, Captain Miller watched with growing pride. He had believed in humanity's strength, but seeing it with his own eyes was something entirely different. They're not going to believe it, he whispered to himself. But they have to now. The alien leader seemed to hesitate, its mind clearly struggling to understand the new reality in front of it. You are a paradox, it said slowly. We believed that your bodies were weak, that your lifespan was short. But now we see that you are more than we thought. There is strength in you that we cannot understand. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. She had already proved her point. She had shown the aliens that humanity's true power wasn't just in its technology or its ability to fight. It was in its will to survive. And no matter what challenges were thrown at them, humans would always find a way to keep going. The alien leader stepped back, its expression unreadable. We will reconsider our view of your species, it said. The other aliens murmured, unsure of what to make of the situation. Sarah's display of strength had shaken them in ways they hadn't expected. For the first time, the aliens were unsure. They had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but now they realized that humanity was far more than they had bargained for. The storm above Sarah slowly began to lose its fury, as if it had witnessed something it couldn't quite understand. The alien leader stood motionless, its eyes fixed on Sarah, who had just defied everything they thought they knew about humans. The once proud and confident aliens were now left in a state of uncertainty. They had come to Earth with their minds made up, certain that humanity was weak and fragile. But now, they were starting to doubt everything. Sarah's body was still healing, regenerating, as if it was a natural part of her. The lightning strike that had once seemed like a death sentence hadn't even slowed her down. Her skin was unmarked, her clothes torn, but her strength unshaken. The power of regeneration was something the aliens had never witnessed, and now they were forced to consider the possibility that humans were not weak after all. The alien leader turned to the other beings around it. We cannot explain this, it said, its voice softer now, filled with confusion. This human should have been destroyed, but instead she stands before us, healing. How is this possible? The other aliens murmured among themselves, their cold, calculating minds working furiously. They had scanned the human body, studied Earth's atmosphere, and predicted the outcomes of their tests. Everything they had seen told them that humans were fragile, their bodies unable to withstand extreme conditions. But Sarah had proven them wrong. There was something about humanity that they couldn't understand. One of the aliens, a scientist, spoke up hesitantly. Perhaps there is more to humans than we realized. Their bodies, they'd regenerate faster than anything we've ever seen. The alien leader turned sharply. Regeneration. That is impossible. We've studied their biology. Their cells should not be able to heal at this rate. They are weak. But we saw it with our own eyes, the scientist replied, almost unwilling to believe it. She was struck by lightning, and yet she heals faster than any known species. Could it be that humans have some ability we missed, something that allows them to recover in a way we don't understand? The leader's eyes narrowed. It hadn't considered that possibility. The alien race prided itself on its scientific knowledge, its understanding of the universe. But now, they were faced with a human who defied all logic. The leader turned back to Sarah, still standing tall despite the impossible odds. She had not only survived, but had done so in a way that the aliens could not explain. It was clear that the test was not going as planned. The leader had expected to crush humanity's spirit, to prove that they were weak and unworthy of respect. But now, it was the aliens who were shaken, doubting their own assumptions. "We have miscalculated," the alien leader said slowly, more to itself than to the others. "This human, she is not weak. She is stronger than we believed." The leader paused, its mind racing. Was humanity truly as fragile as they had thought? Or was there something more? The question lingered in the air, and for the first time, the aliens weren't so sure of the answer. They had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. But now, they were faced with a challenge they hadn't prepared for. The crowd of humans, still watching from a distance, could feel the shift in the air. The aliens were no longer so sure of themselves. Sarah had done what they thought was impossible. And in that moment, humanity had shown them that they were far stronger than the aliens had ever imagined. Captain Miller, standing in the crowd, couldn't help but smile. "It's working," he whispered. "We're making them doubt. We're showing them what we're capable of." The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves questioning everything. They had underestimated humanity. And as the storm began to fade, it became clear that this encounter was far from over. The storm finally died down, and a heavy silence settled over the testing grounds. Sarah stood in the center of the area, her body healed and her strength restored. Her breathing was steady, her expression calm. She had passed the test, not by brute force, but by showing the aliens that humanity had an incredible power they could not ignore. The aliens, once so certain of their superiority, were now standing in a tight circle, whispering to each other in their strange language. Their eyes occasionally flicked toward Sarah, still trying to understand what had just happened. They had come to Earth expecting to prove that humanity was weak, but instead, they had witnessed something they couldn't explain, something that made them question everything they thought they knew. The alien leader stood apart from the others, its eyes fixed on Sarah. For the first time since their arrival, it didn't speak with arrogance. There was no pride in its voice. Instead, there was an unmistakable sense of defeat. It had underestimated humanity in a way that now seemed foolish. It had seen the lightning strike Sarah, expecting her to fall, expecting her to die. But instead, she had stood up, healed, and proven that humans were far more resilient than the aliens could have imagined. The leader turned to the other aliens, its voice steady, but tinged with something close to awe. "We have been wrong." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The alien leader repeated itself, louder this time. "We have underestimated humanity. Their strength, their power to heal, it is beyond what we believed possible. They are not weak." The other aliens exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen it with their own eyes. They had watched as Sarah recovered faster than any known species could. She had endured the storm, the lightning, the heat, and she had not only survived, but had come out stronger. Now, standing before them, Sarah was proof that humans were not the fragile beings the aliens had believed. One of the aliens, a younger one, spoke up in a voice full of uncertainty. "But they are so different from us. Their bodies heal. They can recover from injuries quickly. We thought they were fragile. How is this possible?" The alien leader sighed, its shoulders slumping. "It does not matter. The truth is clear now. Humanity is not fragile. They possess a strength we do not understand. They are far more powerful than we ever gave them credit for." Sarah watched the exchange from where she stood, the weight of the moment sinking in. She didn't need to say anything. The aliens had already seen what humans were capable of. They had witnessed the power of regeneration, the strength of will, and the determination to never give up. The alien leader looked directly at Sarah, its voice soft but sincere. "You have proven us wrong. Humanity is not weak. You are strong. We admit defeat." The words felt strange, almost foreign, coming from the leader of a species that had once believed itself to be the greatest in the galaxy. But Sarah didn't smile. She didn't boast. She simply nodded, acknowledging their words. Captain Miller, watching from the distance, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His heart swelled with pride for Sarah and for all of humanity. "We did it," he whispered to himself. "We showed them." The aliens stood in silence, their faces unreadable. The tension was gone, replaced by something else: respect. They had come to Earth to prove their superiority. But instead, they had learned something invaluable. Humanity was not to be underestimated. As the aliens turned and began to withdraw, the leader's final words echoed in the air. "We will leave your planet. But know this: we have learned much today. Humanity is a force to be reckoned with." Sarah watched them go, her heart racing with a sense of victory. She had shown them the strength of humanity. And in that moment, the aliens had learned the most important lesson of all: never underestimate the power of the human spirit. The aliens had admitted defeat. For Sarah and the humans watching, it was a moment that would change everything. The tension in the air was finally gone, replaced with a feeling of triumph. The aliens, once so confident in their belief that humanity was weak, were now retreating. They had come to test the humans, to crush their spirits. But in the end, it was the humans who had proven their true strength. Sarah stood tall, her body still humming with the energy of regeneration. She could feel the eyes of the aliens on her as they turned to leave, but she didn't move. She had done what no one expected. She had shown the world and the universe that humans were capable of far more than anyone believed. The alien leader, once so cold and calculating, now looked at Sarah with a mixture of respect and awe. "We will leave your planet," it said, its voice steady but with an edge of admiration. "You have shown us your strength. We have made a grave mistake in underestimating you." The alien ships began to lift off the ground, their engines humming as they soared into the sky, leaving the planet behind. The humans stood in silence, watching them go, still processing what had just happened. They had won. Not through war, not through weapons, but through the simple, unbreakable will to survive. Captain Miller, standing at the front of the group, looked over at Sarah. His heart swelled with pride. She had done it. She had faced the impossible and come out victorious. And now, humanity stood on the edge of a new chapter. The aliens had come to prove their superiority. But instead, they had learned that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As the last of the alien ships disappeared into the sky, the humans began to cheer. It wasn't just a celebration of their victory. It was a celebration of what it meant to be human. It was a celebration of their ability to overcome, to endure, and to thrive in the face of adversity. The aliens had come to test them, but it was the humans who had proven their worth. Sarah felt a rush of emotions as the crowd surrounded her, clapping her on the back, shouting words of thanks and admiration. But she stayed humble. She had only done what any human would have done: survived. She had shown them all the power of regeneration, but that power wasn't just in her body. It was in the hearts of every human who had ever faced adversity and refused to back down. The world had changed that day. The aliens would never look at humans the same way again. They had come to Earth thinking they could crush humanity's spirit. Instead, they had left with a newfound respect, knowing that humanity was capable of greatness. Sarah turned to Captain Miller, her eyes meeting his. "We didn't just win for us," she said quietly. "We won for everyone. For the future." Miller smiled, his pride evident. "You're right," he said. "This is just the beginning." As the sun began to set on the horizon, the humans stood together, united in their victory. They had proven that no matter how strong the enemy, no matter how impossible the challenge, humanity could rise to the occasion. And with that, they knew the future was theirs to shape.